there makers, it's Jo from Minerva. Today we're going to do a sew along of the Liv Blouse by Atelier Jupe. The Liv Blouse is a blouse with a V-neck and a ruffle around the neck. It's got elasticated cuffs and quite a wide boxy shape. Elasticated cuffs are here, and then it's got a single layer ruffle around the neckline, so you'll be learning how to do a narrow hem. Atelier Jupe are a French company, so you will have metric measurements. Inside the packet there's a booklet, and there's a really substantial booklet with really good measurements. There's a couple of different languages in there, so if you go to the language that you need, there's a really good measurement table, so you should be able to find your fit and cut really easily. There's some schematic drawings, some finished measurements, and the pattern comes on a single pattern sheet, so you will need some way of tracing it. So you need to use Swedish pattern tracing paper, or some paper that you use for tracing, or you can trace your pattern pieces straight onto your fabric with carbon paper and a serrated wheel. The fabric that I've chosen today is an Atelier brunette crepe, and it's got a nice sheen to it, not shiny, but when it moves you really get a really good sense of the light and dark tone of that colour. So I've chosen something that has quite a drape so that you get a ruffle around the neck. If you make it in a cotton that's too stiff, you'll end up with a sort of a frill that doesn't hang down, so a crepe is perfect. And just for a change, I'm going to make a solid colour top, because if I'm always making a patterned one, then none of my clothes go with any of my other clothes. The pattern pieces are very straightforward. You just need to make sure that you keep your pattern pieces on the grain line, especially for the frill, or the frill won't hang properly. So a grain line is the arrow on the pattern piece, and you keep that parallel to the selvage of your fabric. I'm going to thread at the machine and try a little test piece with the needle that I've got in, which is a normal 60 needle. If it's a very light crepe or a slippy crepe, you might need to change to a microtex needle. Just have a little test and see how you can get your best stitch line. Okay, let's start to sew. First thing we're going to do is to mark the centre front of some of the pieces so that we get an accurate ruffle. Because the seam allowances aren't included in the pattern, I added a 1 centimetre seam allowance. So I'm going, because I'm using an overlocker, so I'm happy that I can finish the edges. And we're just going to put a little tailor's tack 1 centimetre in from the centre front, and that marks the centre front. And that's going to be important later, so try not to skip that now. So 1 centimetre down, I've got my little tailor's tack there to mark the centre, and I'm going to do the same on the ruffle piece and the little ribbon piece. The first sewing part that I'm going to do is to make a dart. So I've marked my darts on with a carbon paper and a roller, and they're on the inside. It's a little bit trickier with the solid colour fabric to make sure that you're getting things on the right and wrong side, so just have a double check before you sew each time that you're not putting darts on the outside of your fabric or having seams on the wrong side. So first thing to do is to stitch the darts and press them down towards the hem. Now that the darts are made and pressed, I'm going to finish this piece. I'm going to go along the hem, down the sides and across the shoulders. I'm going to leave the neckline because we're going to work on that when we add the ruffle. Next we're going to work on the ruffle piece, so I'm going to take the paper off and use the iron to press the outer edge of the frill by 1 centimetre, and then I'm going to fold it in half again, so you should have a ½ centimetre hem all the way around the frill. If you're finding ironing on the curve difficult, especially with a slippy fabric, you can try a different narrow hem technique. So I'm going to fold over my outer edge and just sew a single hem. Then I'm going to trim it and then fold it over and sew again. So as long as you use the same seam allowance, I'm allowing 1 centimetre here. So I'm folding over by 0.5, then I'll fold over by 0.5 again. You should have plenty of movement on this curve if you've cut it on the right grain line, because you'll cut across the bias of the fabric and you'll have lots and lots of give and curl to get a frill. The other way you can get a nice finish on that curve is to use a rolled hem foot. So if you've got this in your kit, it's got like a little curved shield going over the exit of the foot. I'll show you how to use that. It's a little more tricky and you might want to practice before you do it on your actual piece. So you put your fabric in and you need to curl the fabric so that it goes up into that curled part of the foot. I'll get you a close photo in 1 second. So as you sew, you keep that fabric curled into that sort of wave shape of metal. You need to go quite slowly around a corner because you want to keep the fabric in that curl shape. And then I'll show you what it looks like. You can use tweezers. That helps sometimes if you want to keep your fingers out of the way, but keep your fabric going through the curve. Okay, so you've got 3 methods you can try there. So there's the rolled hem foot, the press and fold, and to take your fabric through the machine twice to do one sew and then fold and then a second sew. I hope you find some success in one of those techniques, because that's the most tricky part of the whole pattern. Okay, once you've finished the collar ruffles, which did take me a long time, had a little bit of unpicking to do there. I found it quite hard to get around that quite steep curve. Down here was okay because you could go with the pulling on the bias of the fabric, but it was really tough around this corner, but I did get it eventually. I did end up having to cut another couple of ruffles out and throwing 2 away and just starting again. So that's the most tricky bit finished. Okay, the next thing is we're going to add these onto the front collar. Okay, so you're going to match the straight edge of your ruffle. So you're going to put wrong side of ruffle to the right side of the blouse. So you should have your dart as the right side and the edge of your ruffle as the right side. I'm using stock pins at the moment because this is quite a delicate crepe. And you're going to pin along the neckline. And where you put that little thread in, that's where you're going to match up exactly the centre front part of the neck collar. And you'll have a little bit of easing in to do, because you can see there that the collar is wider than the neck hole. So start to sort of pin it into sections. So halve it again with vertical pins, halve it again, and that's how you ease in a larger piece. Keep halving each distance of pins. And then you're going to stitch the shoulders within the seam allowance. Now I've only got a 1 centimetre seam allowance throughout my work, so I'm going to make that quite small there. And then I'm going to make sure that the front matches, and we're going to baste that in place. That means tack it in place, because we have another part to work around there. Okay, now we're going to move on to the back piece. So here's the armholes and this is the back. You should have 2 notches marked on the back, and we're going to make a gathering stitch along there. And that's going to fit the length of your back yoke pieces. So you can just pull them up to see if your gathers are working, and then we can adjust the length once we match up the back seam. You will have 2 back pieces cut on the fold. One you need to pin to the back, so match the ends, and then you could know how much you'll have to adjust the gathering stitches in the middle to make the right length of the back piece to the same length as the yoke piece. Just keep adjusting that, get a little bit bigger, a little bit smaller. Once you've got the back right sides together attached, you're then going to put the second back piece on the other side so that you make a sandwich with the 2 back yokes sandwiching the back with the gathers in the middle. And when you've sewn along there in the same stitch line that you did on the first run, then you'll be able to start the little mini burrito that we do to enclose the back yoke seam. Okay, to make the burrito, you have the right side of your fabric facing up, and here's your yoke lining here. Then you're going to put right sides together. This is the top look with the frill tacked on. So right sides together, the right side of the top against the right side of the back, and we're going to pin, but not sew yet, pin across the shoulder seams. So behind all of this is your other back yoke. I'll show you that in a minute. Let's just pin them on. So you've got the right side of the top against the right side of the back, and then behind that you've got the yoke lining, and here's the raw edge. And to enclose everything, you roll up the back and the front together. So that you can make a sandwich. Looks like that. And now you can move your pins to add that last layer of yoke. Once you've sewn it, you can trim the ends and turn everything carefully out through one of the armholes. Give it a shake. you'll have your ruffle on the front, all your shoulder seam and ruffle attached at the shoulder, and your back yoke seam is all completely enclosed. That all needs a really nice press, because you can get at it now and then you can move on to the next part. The next part of the pattern is to sew the side seams. If you sew the side seams now, then you've got to completely set in a round sleeve. I prefer to put my sleeves in now and then sew up the side seam and the sleeve seam at the same time. So I prefer to set my sleeve in now flat and then fold it in half and go down the arm and then down the side. Right, we're now going to work on, they're calling it the ribbon, which is the neckband. So you're going to join the two short ends of the neckband together and press that seam open. So you've got one continuous piece with the V part at the centre front. And then you're going to fold it in half with the wrong sides together and press it. Then you'll get this neckband, because you've cut it on the bias, that's nice and stretchy. That'll stop it rippling around the neck. And now we're going to work on the tips. Next, you place the tips together and pin, and then you've got a 1 centimetre seam allowance on the end of there to sew off the edge to the 1 centimetre point there and across the other side. Now trim the point and the corners so that you can turn it the right way out. You might need a point turner just to press that point so it's nice and crisp. This now makes the same shape as the neckline on the top, because that V is the same as the V on the front. You won't see this ribbon when the top is finished, because this acts as a sort of mini facing. It will be rolled to the inside. So next you need to match all of the notches. There's a shoulder notch and a back centre notch. So pin the facing binding all the way around. You've got to be quite exact on this centre front. And your binding will have a little bit of stretch in it. There's a centre back marking as well. And then you're going to sew at 0.9, or mine might be a bit less, but you're going to sew at 0.9 all the way around here. And then I'll show you where to clip, and then that is going to fold inside and be like a little mini facing, so you won't see this on your finished top. Once you've got the ribbon on, you can now feel how it's going to turn and be on the inside. You won't be able to do that on the V point unless you clip it. So just if you've got a good matching thread, you're really going to have to be careful. But you're going to snip right into that V so that you're able to flick this to the inside. Right, now we need to know how to attach this. So I'm going to press the ribbon upwards and away from the ruffle, and then we're going to sew from the other side. So the seam line will be underneath the ruffle, and that will be what holds the ribbon down. Because the shoulder seam has the ruffle collar going into it, when you sew this, you'll only be able to sew up as far as you can get, because you can't sew past that little seam there. So you sew the neck in two parts. It does show you in the pattern what to do. So you're going to sew the V on the underneath the ruffle, and then you'll come and sew on the top around the back neck. You can take all of the tacking out from around the neck and press it so that you've got that facing running on the inside. At first, I didn't want to sort of have the top stitching going over the shoulder there. I wanted to try and keep as much of it underneath as I could, but actually it does help the ruffle to stay nice and flat on your shoulders. Just because of the curl of my fabric, I have hand sewn the 2 points of my ruffle together down that centre line. You don't have to, but mine had a real curl on them, so I just thought I'm going to keep that nice point shape. Okay, the last thing to do is to add the casings around the sleeve. So you need to have that narrow casing on each sleeve to thread elastic through, and then there's the hem to turn up, and then we can try it on. So that's the Liv blouse. I hope you like it. I really like the sort of easy fit of it. If you make it in quite a silky fabric, it can look quite evening-y, or you can make it in a crepe, a colourful crepe, like this is a crepe here. But you'll need something with a drape, and you'll need to spend quite a lot of time getting, these are all my mistake ones, quite a lot of time getting that ruffle right, because that's the main feature, and you want that to lie really, really nicely. All the products that I've used are listed below, and you can hover over it and keep it as a whole kit, and it will go straight to your basket, or you can take it to your basket and then delete things as necessary and swap in your fabric choice. Don't forget, you can join the Minerva Club and have offers and discounts delivered to your mailbox throughout the year.